Let's move on now. Sorry. Our next session is titled Globalizing Higher Education. Now, in India, the drive towards globalizing higher education underscores the nation's aspirations to become a knowledge hub on the international stage.
Absolutely. In fact, through strategic collaborations as well with global institutions, Indian universities, of course, have been facilitating cross-cultural exchanges and also expanding the access to diverse educational opportunities also, which are now being provided to all the students within India.
Exactly. Now, embracing this paradigm shift not only enhances the quality of education, but also positions India as a key player in shaping the future of higher learning on a global scale. And Meghna, no one better than us to say, I mean, we have this iconic Bennett University, which is one of our group companies itself. So anyway, to shed more light on the topic, please welcome Raghu Sundaram. He's the Dean, NYU Stern School of Business. Let's have a round of applause for Raghu Sundaram.
Well, we heard him yesterday, and today we are definitely looking forward to your session. Over to you, sir.
Folks, I know it's a little late in the evening, but when the organizers ask for applause, surely you can do better than that. Little better. That is okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here today with all of you. I'm going to keep my speech down to just 10 minutes, so I decided not to use any slides. It's particularly difficult for me because I'm a very restless speaker. But my thanks to the organizers. This has been a splendid event, really energizing event, and thanks particularly to Mr. Vinit Jain. I just met him. It's really a fabulous event. It's particularly wonderful to be here because this is an event today that in a world that is torn by strife, torn by war, divided by politics, it's bringing together yet again an astonishing group of thinkers, doers, movers around the world to ideate and create the world we think we would like to see our children inhabit. The theme of this year's conference is disruption, diversification, and development. And truthfully, when I saw the theme of the conference and I'd been asked to speak at it, I actually smiled to myself. I smiled because no sector of human activity is possibly related to the confluence of these topics than higher education is. The role of higher education in fostering development, in fostering disruption, this is well acknowledged. What is less well acknowledged is the enormous role higher education has played around the entire world in bringing people together and fostering peaceful development and peaceful disruption. I'm going to illustrate this point by talking about the two countries that I know best, India and the United States. Higher education is in many ways the cornerstone and the foundation of prosperity in both countries, in both the US and in India. It is also the sphere of activity, I'm going to argue, that more than any other has brought India and the US closer together, and that in my mind will continue to form the foundation of the India-US relationship, a relationship we often talk about as the defining relationship of the 21st century. Within each country, the importance of education is obvious. The US has what I think almost anyone would acknowledge as the greatest university system in the world. And if you take a list of the world's leading experts in almost any discipline, a sizable number of them will belong to US universities. The growth and contribution of universities to India's rise is also completely obvious, especially to those of us in this room. The arrival of India as a major player in IT, in pharma, and in so many other areas would have been impossible without a robust university system that identifies and develops the required talent. I'm old enough to remember the time when India was a very poor country, and even at that time, India had a robust educational systems, the IITs and the IIMs and regional institutions competing with them, churning out talent that was recognized the world over. A talent that was, institutions that were recognized for the quality of the graduates that were produced. But it is across the two countries that higher education has had its greatest impact. Higher education is really the link that binds India and the US together more than any other. One half of all Indian students studying abroad study in North America, and students from India today constitute the single largest group of foreign students studying in the US, a third of all students in Canada, nearly a quarter of all students in the US. Many of those students, of course, return home taking with them the valuable networks and connections they have developed, and these connections will last them a lifetime. Many others also stay and become valuable contributors to the local economies and societies of North America. It's an observation that has been made very often, particularly in the last 10 years or so, just how many current and past CEOs of iconic American corporations, the Google, Microsoft, Adobe, Pepsi, McKinsey, Starbucks, Federal Express, United, US Air, so many others are all Indian in origin. As are so many leaders in academia, in medicine, and even now, politics. Less commonly noted, in the context of noting how many US corporate leaders are actually Indian in origin, less commonly noted is almost all of them went to the US first as students. It was higher education that brought the talent to the US and then developed the talent. Higher education, in my mind, will continue to form the bedrock of the relationship. As higher education grows in importance, it will continue to form the bedrock of the relationship and continue to foster deep people-to-people link across civil society. The interesting question here is, what form will that take? So far, the flow has been almost entirely in one direction, Indian talent going to America. And in this context, I must note two peculiarities of higher education institutions in general. Unlike most corporates, higher education institutions happen to be highly collaborative institutions. Research across universities is not only occurring, it is actively encouraged by universities. So most research takes place in a setting where researchers reach across universities and create valuable output. And at the most important time in an academic's career, at the time of granting tenure, universities reach out to other universities to ask them, would you grant this person tenure? I want you to think about both these facts in the context of the corporate world. Pharmaceutical companies, for example, collaborating on research is the exception, not the norm. In universities, it's the norm, not the exception. But firms reaching out to their rivals to ask them their opinions on their own talent is certainly unheard of. Law firms don't reach out to other law firms to ask whether their employees should be made partners. Universities routinely reach out to other universities to gauge the value of their own talent. So universities are particularly peculiar in that regard. But where they differ the most, I think, from corporations is, even as the world has shrunk more and more on account of globalization, even as the world has become smaller in almost every respect that we can think of, higher education institutions uniquely have tended to just stay put where they started. It's difficult to think of any iconic corporate name, a Google or a McKinsey, a Goldman Sachs or a Toyota, without almost automatically thinking of the very large number of places across the world where they operate. Yet almost all the famous names in higher education that one can think of have remained single campus entities with not much of a discernible global footprint beyond their original campus. Very few universities have been exceptions to this rule in the West. My own university, I'm glad to say, NYU, New York University, has been a pioneer in this. NYU is today easily North America's most global university, a university which has 3 full degree granting campuses, the home campus in New York, but also ones in Shanghai and Abu Dhabi, and 12 other what we call mini campuses spread across the globe, from London to Sydney, from Accra to Buenos Aires, from Tel Aviv, through Tel Aviv and lots of other places. There are 12 places in all, Los Angeles, Washington, many others. This expansion has enabled NYU to deepen our international connections, to provide our students with an immersive global experience that almost no university can rival, an experience that we consider central to forming the global citizens and leaders of tomorrow. But it is in this context, I think, my last several years of visiting India has told me that the most under-observed thing in India is that it is in this context, I think, that Indian universities are actually going to lead the world. Indian universities have become amongst the most entrepreneurial and adventurous of all educational institutions in the world. So many of them have opened campuses abroad in the last 10 years. Most recently, I had a 1-hour conversation with IIT Madras on their opening this campus in Tanzania last year, going into a part of the world where most Western universities are shying away from, and here is in the IIT Madras opening a campus in Tanzania using their own faculty, but developing local faculty also there. It is in this trend in globalization, the one that higher education has largely shied away from. I think that the future of higher education is going to lie. It is this trend that is going to mark the disruption and diversification, eventually the democratization of higher education in the coming century. It is this that will, to me, that will continue to be the dominant force fostering international ties and above all leading to economic development. India here is truly leading the world. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sundaram. Concise and to the point. Thank you so much for that.